Speaker.
Honourable Ann Tolley.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I stand, of course, in the House to support the passage of this bill, and I have to start, I think, by reading out and giving some context to some previous debates. And I'd just like to quote from the Honourable David Cunliffe, who rose to speak to the original bill on the 27th of March 2003, and he said, "I do think that the Intelligence and Security Committee deserves some commendation for this bill because it has sought to balance the need to update and modernise our communications security infrastructure legislation with the need to protect third parties from accidental eavesdropping or interception. The bill does provide a legislative basis for non-warranted, non-authorised interceptions under specific certain circumstances that are set out in the bill." Mr Speaker, that was said by the Honourable David Cunliffe in the third reading of the bill in 2003. Very sensible contribution, which unfortunately hasn't been repeated in this House tonight. It was also interesting to hear the previous but one leader of the Labour Party, the Honourable Helen Clark, who in the weekend backed the GCSB bill and said, yes, I think the real issue is there is a gap in the law, which the Kitteridge inquiry apparently found that there was, and if so, how do you deal with that? And how do you take the opportunity at the same time to write in more controls to protect the privacy of the individual? Mr Chairman, I submit that tonight we are looking at a bill that actually does exactly what the former leader of the Labour Party is suggesting. In fact, it does what New Zealand First is complaining about, and even to a certain extent what the Greens are complaining about, that the previous legislation that was passed under a Labour government in 2003 had significant problems with the drafting, and that created an opportunity for the GCSB to act, particularly on behalf of other agencies, erroneously. It was clear in the legislation there were contradictions. The GCSB over the last 10 years has used interception powers on 88 individuals on the understanding that it was acting lawfully under the law that Labour government passed. What has now emerged is, of course, there was a contradiction in the law, and even Helen Clark, the Prime Minister at the time the original bill was passed, actually admitted that that needed to be fixed. So that's what this piece of legislation in front of us tonight is attempting to do, and it's a pity, Mr Chairman, that we have a continual play of politics around this very serious bill. Because the last time this bill was in front of the House, Labour proposed it, New Zealand First supported it, the Greens clearly opposed it because they opposed the need for the GCSB, but there was a thanks to the opposition for supporting the bill and recognising the importance of the security of this country. Now, Mr Speaker, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the comments that have been made. And one comment that's been made during the politicking by the Labour Party opposite was that public confidence in the GCS bill is at an all-time low. Well, I would dispute that, but I would also maintain that the misrepresentations by the politicking coming from that side of the House have contributed to the public's confusion about what we're trying to do here tonight. They have some responsibility for casting aside any responsibility for security for this nation in order to play politics because they're falling in the polls. And I think that their leader will come to regret the stance that they have taken. I have to applaud both United Future and the Greens in particular, because they despise this law. They despise all our spying laws, and they make no apologies for that. That's their philosophical position, and you have to respect that. But what they've done is they've come to the House and made some serious, sensible suggestions. Not all of them we would agree with, but they have at least attempted to make the bill to contribute to making the bill better in their eyes. What we get from the Labour Party, all they're interested in is having an inquiry. They're not interested in writing and fixing the things that were wrong with the bill, with the previous Act. They're not interested in closing those loopholes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. They are not interested in addressing any of the issues, the legitimate issues that have been raised about some of the legalities of some of the actions in the current Act. All they're interested in doing is playing politics, and all they have proposed is an inquiry. Mr. Chairman, I would like to actually focus on 8, where in the previous bill, in the previous Act, in the existing Act, we had a very minor explanation of exactly what the GCSB's responsibilities were. What this bill attempts to do is to set it out very clearly and to make it absolutely clear that it has 3 distinct functions and what those functions are. I would like to just finally concentrate on 8C, which is about the cooperation with other entities, which actually got us to the position that we're in now, where the GCSB believed that the legislation gave them the legality to act as agents on behalf of. The previous Act, you could drive a tractor through. Anybody and everybody could come to the GCSB and ask them to act as their agents. What this bill does now is tighten those, limit those agencies to 3, specifically it's quite clear. 8C1A is the New Zealand Police, 8C1B is the Defence Force and the New Zealand Security Intelligence Service, and the amendment that Mr Dunn is putting in means that nobody else, no other department, no other agency can approach the GCSB and ask them to act as agents without this Parliament deciding that that is appropriate. And I think that's a very sensible change, and the government will be supporting that. But I just want to make it clear to the New Zealanders who are listening to this debate, because they are really confused. This bill, nothing in this bill gives the GCSB the ability to spy willy-nilly on New Zealanders. If the GCSB acts as agents for other agencies, they have to have the legitimate ability to do it. So if the police go to them and ask them, they do, Mr Little. They have to have a warrant before the police can apply to the GCSB to act as their agents, and then they are protected by another addition into this bill of the IPCA. So we have strengthened the requirements, we have strengthened the accountability, and that's what makes this a very good bill for the interest of New Zealand's security.
The Honourable Phil Goff.
Chairman, I want first to refer back to the speech